later here. So thanks again, everybody. This is going to be a demonstration of Landscape, which is software for managing your land conservation activities and stewardship activities. I'm Caleb Pourchot. I created Landscape, and with me also today is Michael Madole.
Hello.
And together we will show you what Landscape is all about. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up here on the screen and see if it won't do the full screen. That's okay, we'll deal with that. All right, so to start at the very beginning, Landscape is web-based software that you access through a web browser. You don't install it on a server or local computer. You access it through a web browser. Everybody gets their own username and password. And when you sign in, you see the dashboard. This is the first thing that you see when you sign into Landscape. And the dashboard's purpose is basically to aggregate all the key statistics about your conservation program in a single place where everyone has access to the data without having to do a lot of complicated querying and reporting. You don't have to ask various people throughout the organization to tell you how many acres you've protected this year or how many easements versus fee. All that information can be displayed very easily in these various panels of data that I call widgets. There's some built-in widgets, which is what you're primarily looking at here. Widgets such as showing you how many properties you've conserved in total, how many acres that represents, graphs of properties protected over time, summaries of conservation values that you've protected. So if you want to compute metrics based on the types of habitat maybe that you protect in your program, you could do that inside of a widget. Widgets can be displayed as tables, as you see here, as simple summaries, graphs, so line charts, pie charts, also as maps that are interactive. So if you wanted to see the map of all the properties that you've protected, it's really easy to do widgets like that. Pretty much anything that you can query out of the database, you can visualize as a widget on this dashboard. And the widgets that are showing and their placement and size and those things are customizable per user. So you can have the most relevant data to you visible on the screen when you sign in. And when you make changes to the layout of the dashboard or add widgets, you're not affecting anybody else's view of the dashboard. It's just your own. So that's the dashboard. Let me think if I'm forgetting anything about this. So a couple of these things I did want to point out. These tables are just summaries, but if you wanted to drill into the details of what properties are making up some aspect of that table, you can do that. You can click right into the details of those things from these various lists. Okay, so I'm going to go then into the views page, and the views page is really going to be where you would do any more complicated querying and reporting on your data. So it shows your data in a very familiar table-like format with columns that you can decide what is showing in these lists. And there's a bunch of built-in views. So usually it's going to be showing you all of some category of data. In this case, it's showing me all properties. But you can create your own views and name them, and they'll show up in this list then so that you can easily retrieve specific views on your data that are important to you. So whether that's maybe stewardship sites that you need to go monitor, or it's issues that you're tracking that are open, all of those things can be saved as views that you can just call up from this list and refresh this table with that data. These tables can also just be filtered in place. So here's a list of property records. If I wanted to see, for example, just the active properties, I could do that and just filter the list that way. If I wanted to see properties that were just fee, I could add that filter as well. And now I've got just active fee properties. So it's really easy to slice and dice this data in place here in this table. So a couple of the other things I can do, if I want, I can export these in various ways. I could export it out as a spreadsheet, in which case I'm just going to get a table that looks like that table in the background. But I can also create what are called report templates. And report templates give me a way of visualizing my data in a nicely printable format. And templates are completely customized by you. There's a template editor that I'll show you a little bit later. But this is basically what a template could look like. So I've made an easy property acquisition summary template here, which might be something that you want to share with a committee or the board to show what properties you're actively working to conserve. It's merging in data about that property into this template. So it's telling me its size and what interest it is, what's the stage it's in, where is it, who's the staff lead. I can have other information like what are its conservation values, where is it in the approval process. I can also merge in maps very easily into the reports. So this is a map of the property, and then it's just going on to the next one and the next one and so on. And so I could print this out or save this to PDF and email it to somebody. It's really easy to generate this kind of nicely formatted report. And so I want to just say the templates themselves are completely customizable. You can change fonts and sizes. You can decide what data is showing on these reports. So this is just a sample. Another example of a report template you might want to run would be something like if you have, you want to send a landowner letter to all your landowners before you monitor their properties. Well, one way you could do that is you get yourself a list of what are called stewardship sites in landscape, and I'll talk about what that means. Again, you can select a few of them. I can generate that pre-visit letter to all my landowners. And you can see that this template looks a lot different. So it's laid out to be more like a letter. If I wanted to, I could print this to letterhead instead of having my logo and whatnot up here. But you can see then it's putting in the landowner's name, their salutation, the name of the property. It's also can dig into things like the reserved rights that the landowner might have. And so in this case, it's saying, you know, do you anticipate exercising any of these different reserved rights this year? And the nice thing is you can tell that these are each different for every property. So it's taking the data specifically for that property and merging it into the letter. So this saves me a ton of time when I'm generating those letters that I might need to do every single year before I go and monitor a property. Okay, so that's views. This is where you're going to do, again, more of your complicated querying and reporting type tasks. But if I want to actually look at where this data is coming from, I'm going to go into an actual property record now. And the easiest way to find a property record or anything else that you're looking for in landscape is to use this search box up here in the upper right-hand corner. And it's a universal search throughout the whole database. So you can see if I type in a keyword, it's going to find it in various categories throughout the database. In this case, I'm going to look for Astrid's Extravagant Woods. That's the property I'm looking for. So I click into that. And now what you're looking at is the property record itself. So the property record represents your interest, your legal interest in a piece of land, or an interest you're hoping to acquire, as would be the case if it were an active acquisition. So the purpose of the property record then is to basically be the archive of all the stuff that represents what you've done in terms of due diligence to acquire this property. It has a few fields related to its sort of just details. So when did it start? Description, when did it end, recording information, how big is it, what method was used to acquire it, you know, purchase, bargain, sale, something else, donation. You can tag it in various ways. So these categories are just customizable categories that you can define for your own organization. And then you can put these tags, attach them to this property record. It makes it really easy then to find certain types of properties that you might be looking for when you want to do those views or those or that reporting. You can also indicate the purchase price, the appraised value, the donated value. There's also information about where the property is. And so state, county, local jurisdiction, PLSS if you're out in the West, directions, congressional district, House district. The nice thing about all of this stuff is that a lot of these fields can be filled in directly from the boundary that you end up importing in to this map here. So I can just go over to this menu here, say get locations from map, and it will go out to the internet and do its best based on this polygon to fill in what congressional district it's in, what House district it's in, etc. Also in here, I have my contacts. So these are the people that are associated with this property. And contacts can have tags. So one contact could have multiple associations with this property or multiple properties. But I create those associations by tagging them in various ways. And so in this case, I've got landowner, I've got caretaker. I could have the original grantor as a tag. That would be another useful one. Co-holders of easements, they would be in here as well. They could be tagged as co-holder. And then there's a difference between active contacts and inactive contacts. So active contacts are the people who are current. If I want to make an active contact inactive, I basically give them an end date. So if this were a landowner who sold their property to somebody else, they're no longer an active contact. They've now jumped down here to inactive contacts. But this allows me then to just keep a running list of all the landowners who have been associated with this property over time. I'm going to clear out that date so that they pop back up. And now he's back in active contacts. Also in a property record are conservation values. So you can define for your own organization categories of conservation value that you want to be able to measure, and then assign certain amounts of that conservation value, if applicable, to this property record. So this is how you can keep track of that. Those things can make their way into reporting and querying. Capital funding would be specifically the money that you get in terms of grants or otherwise to purchase your interest in this property. You can have multiple sources with each one contributing different amounts. You can just keep a list of notes about the property. So anything, just random information that you want to keep track of related to the property, you can put it in the notes field. And then there are communications which are separate from notes. So communications are specifically calls or emails or meetings you've had with specific people. And then those things are all in here in a searchable way, so you can find them. The other nice thing about these communications is that they're not only attached to particular property records, but they're attached to the contact themselves. So if Monty is a landowner that we work with on several properties, he maybe owns several properties, I'm going to be able to access the communications I have with that person, regardless of which one of those property records I'm looking at. So I won't lose some part of the conversation that I might be having with that person in different contexts. So jumping over to the map here, the map is full of data with layers that you can bring data into. So there's the outer boundary here, but there's also inner boundaries that I've created that define things like building zones, agricultural zones. I might want a line layer maybe that defines where a utility easement runs across the property. So all those things can be done. That geography can be hand drawn. It can be imported from shapefiles or KML files. If it's photos, you could bring in photos that have been geotagged and it will create points for them on the map automatically. So lots of different ways you can get that data into the maps inside of landscape. So all the meat of this property record, these are just kind of the details, the specifics about it. The meat of the property record lives in its assets. And so assets are all the stuff that you collect as you're acquiring your legal interest in this property. So there's a bunch of different categories of asset. There's appraisals. So an appraisal, for example, would have who was the appraiser, what's the appraised value. If you want to capture before, after, or per unit value, you can do that. You can attach actual digital documentation to this record. So if I wanted to see that appraisal PDF, I could attach that record. Notes, if I wanted to keep track of how much I paid for this appraisal, I can do that. And that can lend itself to working with budgets in something called a project, which I'll talk about if I have time at the end. So there's appraisals, there's approvals. So different bodies that might have to approve projects throughout various stages of its acquisition. Again, everything's going to have notes and documents. You've got baseline reports, donation, substantiation. So if you want to keep track of that 8283 form, that's a good place to put that. Your recorded easements can be just general property assets. Purchase agreements have not only when it's executed and when it expires, but also contingencies that you can track and whether they've been satisfied or not. You can do site visits. So this would be pre-acquisition site visits, environmental hazards assessments, maybe just a site visit questionnaire. So you're evaluating the property for whether or not you want to actually conserve it. And then there's surveys and there's title work. And again, all these things have notes and documents that you can attach to these assets. So as you build out this asset list and you're attaching electronic documents to everything, all of those documents are being aggregated over here on the right-hand side in this list. And this makes it really easy to find documents that you might be looking for because you can filter this list on a keyword. So if I just wanted to find the survey document, I can just filter that survey, and there it is. And I can click on the eyeball, and there's my survey document. So it's really easy to find things that you're looking for in this documents list. So back to the details page. So that's the property record. Again, it represents your legal interest in a piece of land. And I didn't say it before, but the interest that you hold is totally customizable. So it may be as simple as just fee or easement, but if you're dealing with other types of interests, mineral rights, water rights, just third-party enforcement rights, you can define those things as different property interests that are available then in this list. So these properties then relate themselves to what's called a stewardship site in landscape. And a stewardship site is where you're going to track everything else that you've done on the property after you've acquired it. Generally, there's going to be a one-to-one mapping between a property record and a stewardship site. That's especially true in the case of easements. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's flexible enough to handle mapping of multiple properties to a single stewardship site, as would be the case if you were acquiring a preserve over time in multiple transactions. Or if you have an easement property that can be subdivided, each one of the individual landowners could be treated as its own stewardship site. And then you can track issues and reserved rights and all those things at the landowner level, the landowner parcel level. So it's flexible enough to handle both situations. So if I jump then into the stewardship site record, and here I've got a few other details. I've got categories that are specifically stewardship site categories. So I've got a couple here like, is it terra firma insured? Maybe I want to do categories based on monitoring group. So some land trusts might want to be able to quickly say, which group of properties do I monitor at a single time or in a single time period? That would be one way of using a category. You also have access instructions, emergency instructions. All of this property parcel information, the location data and the contacts, that's all there for free because the property has been attached to the stewardship site. So this is the same information that was over in the property record. If I change it here, it's going to be reflected over there and vice versa. But it makes it really easy to go from the property record to a stewardship site. And in some land trusts, if you have that kind of separation of work where there's land conservation folks and then there's stewardship folks, that handoff is made a lot easier by the fact that all this stuff just comes over for free. So in a stewardship site, you also have obligations. So by default, we put in an annual monitoring obligation for your stewardship sites, but you can remove this, you could add others, you could change the frequency. An obligation just reminds you basically that there's something that you have to do on this property. And so this is how you would track in the 99% case where you're doing an annual monitoring visit, this is how you track whether or not that's been done for any given time period. Notes are just random notes about the stewardship site. Those communications show up here as well. They're all the same communications, so you get a complete view of all the stuff that's happening with the various contacts that are associated with this stewardship site and the property. Over on this map, you can see those building zones came over from the property. I've added some other points here that might represent baseline photo points, so you can indicate when were they taken, who took them, what direction were you facing. All that information can be stored in these various points. I also have some other layers on here, like a structures layer that's showing me where the house is on the property. I'm going to jump over here then to the work tab. The work tab gives me a list of all the site visits that have occurred on the property. So a site visit can be for anything, any purpose. So you can create these different types. So it could be just your annual monitoring. It could be a follow-up visit. It could be some sort of management activity. So it could be a work party, or it could be, if it's fee land, maybe it's, I don't know, maintenance on a trail or something else. You can define these different types for yourself. And then this just tracks that that site visit occurred. And so it has its type, a status, You can do start and end times, methods and summaries. You can indicate who was there, what their role was, how many hours they spent. You can also track expenses. So if you wanted to track mileage or something like that, you could do that. Documents is where you would attach maybe your final report for this visit. So it's always going to be attached to this site visit record. You can take just notes, but then every site visit can have its own custom form. And so this is just a sample of what you can do, but basically you can generate your own form questions. They can be yes, no, multiple choice, short answer. And each type of visit can have its own form. So it makes it really easy if you wanted to do, it's also property specific. So if you wanted a separate form for fee land monitoring versus easement monitoring, that's really easy to do. If you wanted just a form for an initial site visit to visit a property to see if you want to conserve it, that's another type of form that you could create. So those forms are really flexible and you can customize them to make them what you need them to be. Site visits also have their own geography. And so this dotted line you see over here in the map is actually the route that I walked on the property. This green dot is the photos that I took. And that information can come in any number of ways. The easiest way is to use the Landscape mobile app. The Landscape mobile app is sort of purpose-built to do site visits in the field. So you can work online or offline, collect this data, come back to the website and sync it all up. Makes it really easy to do site visits with Landscape. And we're going to have a whole demo about that workflow. Michael's going to do that later today at 3 Central Time, I guess. So come back for that if you really want to see the monitoring workflow in Landscape and how it works with the mobile app. So after I'm done, I can generate a report. I press the right button. I can generate a report. Again, this is just a template that is taking the data from the site visit itself and putting it in here along with the form questions. I can do digital signatures. The photos can get added to the report automatically. The map data is in here for me. So then I can just print this out, save it to PDF, and my site visit report is done. Okay, so moving on, also in the stewardship site, I've got management plans. So management plans have when they're approved, when they're effective, when they expire, upload documents and notes. On the status tab, I've got things called issues. So issues are anything that you want to keep track of that kind of lives beyond any particular site visit. So it can have the data was identified and when it's been resolved or not. You can have different types that you can define, different severities, notes, documents. So if you're sending letters, maybe it's a violation, you're sending letters back and forth to the landowner, you can keep track of all those letters attached directly to this issue. Issues also have their own geography. So this big red dot can be the unauthorized structure where it's occurring on the property. It gives me a lot of context then about this particular issue. Rights and approvals. So if the landowner can do things on the property with or without your approval, you can indicate what those things are. You can indicate what the exercise requirement is. Does it require them to notify you or to ask for approval or maybe nothing at all? And then as those things occur, you can keep track of that activity down here. So when the landowner requests approval to build a structure, you can indicate when it was done and what the result was. Maybe you allowed it, maybe you denied it, but it makes it easy to keep track of that history right here in place. On the use tab, we've got all those structures that you can indicate where they are in the property. This house, for example, is one of those structure records. Leases, if you want to keep track of ag leases or forestry leases that you might have on your fee lands, you can do that with these records, indicate who the tenants are, payments that you might receive for those things could be indicated there as well. And then like on the property record, there is an all documents list. And this is going to be not only all the documents that have been attached to any of this stuff that are in these other tabs, like the issues and the site visits and whatnot. But it's also going to show you the list of all the documents that are coming from the property records. So again, that survey document that I showed earlier is going to be in this list as well, because that property is attached to this stewardship site. So as an easy place to find any important document related to this property, this list makes it pretty simple to find those documents. Okay, how am I doing on time? All right, I've got time now, I think, to show you the one last aspect of landscape, which is called a project. And so I'm just going to go to my all projects list here. So a project, I'll just go in here. So a project is, I know a lot of land trusts use the word project basically to mean something that they did to acquire a piece of land. Those are often called projects. In landscape, it's a little bit different. Projects are just a way of organizing tasks and budgets around some activity. The property record is the ultimate record of everything that you've done, and the documents and all that stuff, that all lives in the property record. But if you want to manage the process of acquiring property, then you might want to use a project. And so what a project gives you is a set of goals. And so in this case, there's just one goal. It's acquire this particular piece of land. But in that other project that was in here, maybe you've got some sort of a larger landscape level project that you want to work on. So this might be an acquisition of 3 or more properties that you want to track. As a unit, you might call it, say in this case, Wisconsin Headwaters Protection. But each of these is going to end up being an individual, either easement or fee acquisition as part of that project. So you can organize them into this unit that you call Wisconsin Headwaters Protection, but each one of them can be managed individually as an individual land acquisition. It will ultimately have its own property record and stewardship and all that good stuff too. But if I go into a goal, you can see that a goal will track for me things like budget. So if I wanted to indicate maybe I'm going to spend $4,000 on appraisals, maybe $1,000 on title work or whatever it might be, you can build out that budget, and it will keep track then for you variance on that budget based on actual expenses that you enter into these work items. So in this case, I had an appraisal. It cost $2,500. That's why this number is 2,500, and that's why this is 1,500. It's just subtracting those numbers. So as you enter work into the project, it can track that budget, tell you what your variances are in the various categories of the budget. And then the other big thing that a project gives you is task lists. So you may have a checklist of things that you do for a standard easement project. You can define that checklist ahead of time. And then when you create a new project, you can just apply that checklist. So if this were a purchased conservation easement, I could pick this from this checklist, and it will go ahead and build out all of these task groups and put in all of these tasks that I've already defined as being the starting place for these types of projects. So I can come in here and I can tweak this all I want after the fact. If I want to delete a task, I can do that. If I wanted to add a new task, I can just click that button and add a new task as well. But as a starting place, those checklists are really helpful. So tasks have owners, so you can assign them to various people in your organization. They've got statuses, and then you can do start and or end dates for the tasks. When I'm assigned a task, I'm going to get an email alert. When tasks are coming due, I'm going to get email alerts. And I can change the frequency of how often I get emailed about these things. But the email alert system just makes it, gives another nudge to people in your organization that they have something that they're supposed to be doing. So this is a good way to just have a glance, like an overview glance of where we are with all of our tasks for this project. If I wanted to show that as more of a report, then I could do that with a report template. So here we go. We've got a map. We've got landowner information. We've got all of our tasks and their statuses and who they're assigned to. So you can create reports like that to make it easy to tell where you are on a given project. You've also got these nice dials and percentages and things that will give you status on where you are with your projects. Okay, so with that, I am going to end and open it up for questions that you may have. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or if you feel better chatting it, you can chat it as well. Anyone have any questions? No questions. Could you explain the import process? Yes. So generally what we'll do is evaluate the data that you have in whatever form it happens to be in now. Usually that's going to ultimately get into spreadsheets and shapefiles if you have spatial data as well. Michael, who is the king of imports, will work with you to basically map the data that you have into the way that Landscape wants to organize that data. There's a little bit of a back and forth, but then we do the import. That usually doesn't take too much time at all. We like to get you up and running with using the software as quickly as possible so you can start seeing value from the software. So we might talk about how certain things are sort of high priority, like the layout, the structure of all your data, and then other things might be secondary, like all of the historical documents, the PDFs, things like that. So those might be something that you do as you have time and resources to devote to it. We can do those types of things for you. It just makes the onboarding process a little bit longer, but they can certainly be done. If that doesn't answer the question, just let me know. Anyone else? Questions? No? All right. Yes.
Did you mention the little green light integration?
I did not. So I will. So if you are looking for integrations between Landscape and other tools, one that we offer is with the donor management system called Little Greenlight. It is in my opinion, a great tool for amazing price. So if you already use it, great. Basically what happens is that you can synchronize your contact and communications information between the two. So if you change an address in Little Greenlight, it'll be reflected in Landscape and vice versa. If you have communications with a landowner in either place, you'll see those in both places. So in terms of keeping everybody on the same page and not having to do a lot of duplicate entry, the integration with Little Greenlight is fabulous. So if you're also in the market for a donor management system, you should check them out. If you happen to use something else, like maybe Salesforce, we can also synchronize our contacts with Salesforce. Good question, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Caleb.
Anyone else? We do have another demo at, like I said, 3, I believe, Central Time. There's going to be focused totally on the monitoring workflow and how to use the Landscape mobile app. Michael will be doing that. So if you are around still at that time, please stop by again and check that out if you want to get into more of the meat related to the mobile app. All right, well, thanks everybody for showing up. And if no more questions, then I guess we'll end it a little bit early. But thanks and enjoy the rest of your rally.
Yeah, thanks,
and I should also mention, you've all been entered in the raffle for the free Landscape subscription. So we'll be drawing that after Michael's demo later on this afternoon, and we'll notify you if you've won. So good luck.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.